Lions Mufasa team. So congratulations to all the teams that participated. And you will be receiving awards from us virtually. So, all right, that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed panel of happy hour people to have them tell us what they've got to tell us this afternoon. General Wegman and General Radke.
It's your panel.
Sir, did we actually get Erin Miller on or not? Is it just the two of us? Okay, so this is called sharing the love, and I'm fortunate to have a great boss in General Wegeman. He's agreed to come back up on stage. My understanding is that he had about 25 leftover questions last night that he couldn't get to, and so he is anxiously awaiting those questions. And if we have no questions, sir, we're just going to have a fun dialogue. We do have a beverage of choice up here. We're ready to go. So, Phil, what do you have for us?
Well, sir, we did a little icebreaker question yesterday afternoon with General Wegman. So, since both of you have a more distinguished and more refined Radke in your lives right now, being Mr. Harry Radke.
Okay.
I was wondering where he was going with that.
I'm glad that you have Harry Radke in your life as well, sir.
And I am glad for that as well.
So if each of you could tell me what's the most important life lesson Lieutenant General retired Harry Radke has taught you?
I'll go first. And
Yes, sir.
Is your whole
I'm going to go back.
The year light is Jeopardy light is on. So
Son of the year.
Son of the year Jeopardy light is at risk. Your trophy's at risk right now. If you don't.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
Harry Radke is always on and always listening, so I'm going to operate under the assumption that he is on and listening right now. No, I can tell you, so he's been a phenomenal mentor and coach of mine for a few years now, and I've been talking to him a lot lately. And the one thing that I think he continues to emphasize with me that is the most powerful thing that we all have in this room and on this stage and in this digital space is our network. Right? Our team of teams, our connections, our partnerships, personal and professional, the nexus of personal professional. You know, it kind of goes right to the hashtag peopleware where I started in the symposium. So that's really what he's been emphasizing to me, you know, and where I'm at in my career. And it's proven to be totally invaluable. And one of the things I'll say about Harry Radke is if you want to know in certain what networking looks like, look no further. And actually, Harry, I can tell you your son is a very, very proficient networker as well. So that's my answer.
Well, sir, I think that's a great answer, and that's one that I've grown up with as well. The power of the network, relationships matter, and that obviously has come through. I would say there's two other things that have been instilled in me from the beginning. The first is hard work, and you don't shy away from the hard work. In order to get to the places you want to go, it requires that you dedicate yourself to it. And so that was something that I witnessed personally, and that I continue to witness today. In his retired status, he is still running really hard on a bunch of different activities. The final thing that I would say is optimism. I tell you, my dad just was a phenomenal balancer of life and work, and the professional and the personal. And I mean, even this morning, as I was walking out of the house, he is there seeing me off. He had been up since I think 0500 on a Zoom call, but you know he wanted to see me off and just say hi. And so all of those things are good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Phil. Good icebreaker.
Yes, sir.
Does that conclude
Easy
the
one. Just a
happy
softball
hour?
out there for you. Next question. We do have one from yesterday that I'm going to carry over because I think it will be interesting to get your guys' thoughts on this. Mr. Brian Marcus asked yesterday that Miss Knassenberger commented on how the cook could save the team. I've met quite a few people that have more cyber talent than many in the wrong roles. Is there going to be any form of formal assessment that anyone can take, regardless of their role, to do a role swap in the to get the passionate cyber individuals into cyber?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I think the theory is completely valid. I would have, honestly, it's a question for AR Education Man is our force development lead, but I'm not trying to deflect it because it's valid, and that the people that are in the digital leadership roles, General Radke, myself, certainly need to be them to act, and we do need, and we've talked about with their student-centered learning and the need to have assessment, a set of tools, let's put it that way, a set of tools where we can get assessments to do that very thing. And so I guess what I owe the audience is maybe a follow-up, see kind of where we're at, but love the intent. It's a good idea. Let me see if I can't figure out where we are in terms of acting on it, unless Chad has something he could share.
Sir, I think you offered the formal mechanism through AETC. I think informally, the work that we're doing with Digital U, I think that gives us a little bit of what color is your umbrella or what color is your parachute. Do you have those hidden skill sets? Do you have a capability of going out and taking those 12,000 courses and perhaps earning some of those digital literacy badges that Ms. Knossenberger talks about? And I think that will be a way, informally, that we can kind of measure where do we have that hidden talent across the force. What we've been saying for a number of years is that this is not just a single career field, that in order to be the digital Air Force and space we need in the future, we've got to lift the game of up to a certain level of digital literacy, the right term. Yep. But informally, I think all of those things are coming.
Yep, great. That was a good question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have a question from Mr. Ivan Herwick. Level mission defense capabilities have been a significant focus area for the community. That was envisioned to largely being sourced from the POM and or manpower freed by implementation of ITAS, but those may not materialize as quickly as originally envisioned. Do you see the need to reshape our appetite for wing level capability? And if so, what does that look like?
You want to go first?
Yes, sir. I'll take a stab at that. So, Ivan, thanks for the question. You're in an important leadership role. I know that you have many folks that you have worked along beside that are so impressed with the way that you do business. So keep it up, my friend. You're doing great work. What you laid out in your question is exactly where we are as an Air Force. We went with a vision that we called Mission Defense Teams about how do we put a persistent cybersecurity activity on our most critical assets that we call our weapon systems. And we did that in a manner of roll out the intent and then try and establish the requirement through the Air Force corporate structure. That has panned out. We have validated what we think that number is, and that number is pretty big. And so the Air Force corporate structure has kind of challenged us to say, okay, you need to probably go back and see how we can get a little more game in this, a little more analysis. And so this is where we're challenging ourselves to say, hey, we understand the requirement and we understand what we're trying to do. We're probably going to have to prioritize, and more importantly, we're going to have to figure out ways to make mission defense teams not just about the people, but augment them with the power of technology, and whether that's AI or ML or whatever else, build in some of that capability so that our technicians can have additional game to come alive. And so we're starting to see that already. We have already, in just the last several years, evolved the game of mission defense teams. We rallied around a single weapon system that we called CVA Hunt. But now we're looking at how do you put source code in a cloud and the ability to go out and almost do an MDT as a service by pulling down code, making it relevant. We're also seeing an increase in the number of digital technicians, coders that are out there that are tweaking that code according to the weapon system dynamics. And so we're already seeing the numbers of MDTers that are out there needed decrease. And so I think that's a good thing. We will continue to do that because it's the right thing for our Air Force.
Yeah, listen, I got my good friend Chad Radke next to me. I'll tell you that on this question, he's a huge, huge champion and kind of one of the founding fathers of the DNA of what is the mission defense team strategy for the Air Force. I know in our two roles that we have together, we went back and forth on that CONOP several times. A lot of track changes, a lot of good thoughts, a lot of give and takes, but I think it's about right. You know, what I would offer to the conversation, I think Chad got it, he nailed it. But so as a MAJCOM that is pretty much centered on organize, train, and equip, those are the three functions that MDTs need to be credible, right? So we have to set up an organization that allows them to properly scale, and that's what we're talking about. You know, if you're an F-16 wing or an F-16 squadron, does every F-16, now that they're going to a common configuration, as a weapon system need a mission defense team in the squadron or on the installation? Or can we figure out a way to federate or maybe have an East Coast and a West Coast hub and spoke nodes so we can handle the scale, because the resources, to Chad's point, don't exist to scale. Other thing is we need to train these people, right? So when you're looking at network-specific kind of threat-agnostic cybersecurity, that's one skill set. But when we're looking at threat-specific and network-agnostic hunting and adversary, you know, resiliency of weapon systems, we got to make sure we upskill and train and educate MDTs to where they need. And so with our great partners in the ARC, we're working to do that. We've increased our capacity greatly in the schoolhouses. And the third point is the equip, to Chad's point. We have to make sure we give them a set of tools that allows them to go out there and conquer in their job. And so CVA Hunt's been one of them. I think there's more out there. We also want to get that into kind of a storefront capability where there's a storefront of apps and tools that we can use, and then all that feeds Elixir, so all the data information we learn across weapon systems is shared, et cetera. So that's kind of what I would add of where we need to go with the mission defense teams. But the good news is everywhere we have them, and they're doing great work, and that's just increasing everyone's value proposition and trust for their brand and what they offer.
I'll piggyback on my boss, because that's what I love about working at Air Combat Command is I have Lieutenant General Wegeman that challenges us on a daily basis to think through the higher level skill sets and the higher level demands that are out there. So, sir, I would just offer on the organized front, you're absolutely correct, and that's part of the analysis of the numbers. We knew that we wanted to go out to every weapon system, but that's unrealistic. So we have built in a C2 structure, started under General Holmes. General Kelly is continuing that. We call it the CDCC, the Cyber Defense Correlation Cell. And so the idea is a mid-tier C2 node that the MDTs can funnel that information up. They can look at it across the enterprise and analyze and then push an F-16 vulnerability across all the other F-16 MDTs that are out there. And so I think that's a continuing robusting capability.
Yep.
I'm going to go out tomorrow to Schriever. They actually have a CDCC space that is very robust. They've been stood up for over a year now. I'm excited to go back and see what they're doing. We have our second CDCC at Langley Air Force Base. They're about 6 or 7 months old, getting their legs under them and doing some really good things.
Yeah.
On the training front, sir, you highlighted the great partnership with the Total Force. And so at McGee Tyson and Little Rock Air Force Base, actually on the Total Force side, we have 2 schoolhouses that have stood up. But to your point, sir, you know, we can put them through a standardized training pipeline, but at some point, this is where we start working with the career field managers to get talent management in place.
Yep.
So as you learn those ninja skills on a specific weapon system, how do we grow you up in that weapon system across the Air Force?
That's right, and keep you moving across
Yes,
from
sir.
team to team.
Yes, sir.
I think we have a third partner now.
Aaron, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so sorry for the delay. I wish I could say I showed up with my beverage in hand, but I don't even have that.
Well, we're glad you're here.
We're glad you're here nonetheless.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Did you have a thought on the MDT question before we move on? Sorry, we should add if you wanted to offer anything from the Space Force perspective.
For me, I missed the question, so we can keep going.
All right, good answer.
So next question. Much like a national championship LSU Tigers football team or an OSU football team there, it's key to have the right people in the right places at the right time as far as leadership roles go. We've been very good at that in the Air Force over history. At this time, it really seems like we have a great cadre set up to take us to the next level. If you take a look at DISA Cybercom, Air Combat Command, Spacecom, Space Force, Air Force civilian and military leaders, the dev centers that we have in place, the national level cyber centers of excellence that we have in place. Can you guys comment on the intention of that, and where do you think that's going to take us in the future, if that's really going to get us to the next level?
Wow. All right, we'll start with Aaron.
Okay, well, so I'm quite familiar with a lot of the different research and innovation centers that are across the US, and even getting more connected with especially ISACs globally. And through that, we'll also get more connected to research and innovation centers. And what I have noticed is there's, I guess we'll call it a systems of systems approach that's happening, where everyone is getting connected, and it is happening faster than maybe we realized, just especially because we've transitioned to COVID remote environments. Then the infrastructure that was already in place between all of the different workses, I'll use as an example, and the research labs and the accelerators that are across the global accelerator network, and then you add the ISAC layer onto that, then all of these organizations quickly, I think, starting to develop interconnectivity to each other. And what our leaders might not realize is how to leverage that connectivity, because it's so complex. Like, we don't even have the tools to map it or understand it, from what I know. So,
Aaron, I think you made a fantastic point on something that was maybe a little bit outside of your zone. But I think the work that you're doing with the ISACs, the network that is being built there, is an example of what is taking place, I think, across our nation right now. And that's really the partnerships between our military services, our industry, our academia, the ISACs, and others that are out there. There's a great systems of systems, as Aaron said, that's coming together on. And we're seeing this take off. Never in my wildest dream, 3-4 years ago, would I have said that an as-a-service model would become everyday lingo. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're recognizing that the as-a-service model is the right approach, because we are not the center of all the good ideas. There is such a powerful network of innovation and technology that is out there. If you can just find the resources to tap into that, it makes us all better. So I agree that there's some great synergy that's starting to develop.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing, what we is, if you wanted like an Ohio State analogy, the digital dream team that was kind of here is a manifestation of kind of the journey, and I would describe it as I did on my keynote, which is maybe 7 or 8 years ago in our digital enlightenment, we were looking at software, data, and innovation through the lens of silos for the sake of software and innovation. But what we've created is, no kidding, a full-blown awakening in our senior leadership, that really what it's all about is, in the Air Force vernacular, is about flying, fighting, and winning, right? It's about mission success and the mission imperative. And when you hitch it, that end state and that outcome, everyone gets behind it and want the dream team, and they go out there, and our human capital and our recruiting, and we find the Lauren Knausenbergers, right? And we keep moving around the Chad Radegis, and we find the Nick Shalanes, and everyone else that's out there, the Steve Hasselhurst, the Lottie Lot species. We figured this out, and the reason we figured it out is because it's no longer about the technological verticals. It's about our mission. It's about our airmen and our guardians winning across the spectrum of conflict. So that's why I think we have this digital dream team. That's the cool part.
Very good, thank you. Probably an even tougher question. What team do you predict will win March Madness?
Well, it's either going to be, well, I'll just say, since my daughter's a Vol, it's going to be University of Tennessee. Go Vols.
Aaron, do you have a March Madness team?
no.
What's your alma mater?
University of Colorado.
Okay.
Well, they're not going to win.
No.
So
I'd say Purdue, my alma mater, but I've seen where they're at. They're not having a bad year.
They're not having
I
a
think
bad year?
Tennessee's doing a little bit better.
okay, so I think the logical choice is Gonzaga. They played
Always.
a really tough schedule preseason, early season, but they have continued to excel. Baylor is tough. Michigan, as much as I hate to say it, they've got a really good team. Big Ten has been just a really solid conference this year. If I had to pick it, and brackets won't open until Sunday on Selection Sunday, I'll go with the early favorite of Gonzaga. Will pull it out this year. Tracy Russo.
You just fell right into that.
She's just
Shrimp forking, yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, next question by Wade Rupee.
Oh,
The past 12 months have been challenging. What is your assessment of the health status of cyber workforce and enterprises?
the health status?
With regards to pandemic impacts, security,
Oh, that's-
resourcing, deployments, and professional development?
Yeah, so Rupi, I think that's a really great question, and it goes to a lot of the stuff that we've talked about already, and the power of relationships and networks. That's been my proudest moment over the last year, is to see the way that the teams have come together in a unity of effort manner to deliver capabilities. Ms. Knossenberger kind of talked about it in her keynote. We went from 7,000 users at any given time on VPN to enabling 450,000 plus. We have rolled out these capabilities like CVR, a Teams-like capability. We're collaborating more than ever. General Wegeman and I were just on a conference, an EIT council, and we were commenting that we had nearly 200 people online, and most of those were not from the office. And so the power of collaboration, the way that we have enabled technology to come together has been really, really good, I think, for our specific career field. And I think to General Wegeman's point, because of that success, that has enabled us to go in and have the broader conversations with senior leaders to say, here is what the capability is, and this is the team that could bring this in place if only given the chance. And so it's a tired workforce because we've been sprinting for the last 12 months, but it's a workforce that reflects at the end of each day and just says, we have come a long way, and boy, oh boy, if we can just keep going, we're so close. And so that's been my experience. Aaron, from your perspective, I know you're at the NCC, and you're doing a lot of virtual work as well. What's the status of your work colleagues?
Yeah, well, I don't think I really need to answer this question by speaking to the status of my work colleagues, because I interact more with the private sector members of the Space ISAC. And so their respective cyber teams and the folks that are designated to represent them in the Space ISAC are, I would characterize it as they are still highly motivated despite the barriers that we've seen to just having a good work-life balance, and having the morale of your colleagues, around all the time, and being able to be encouraged and uplifted on a daily basis because you're in a work setting is something that I've seen a lot of people overcome. But it is still a challenge that has to be overcome daily. And the people that I work with, they are particularly interested in seeing us transition to a model where we're able to address our cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities and our impacts to our space systems. So they're extremely motivated people. They're ready, they're making change. They're participating in history-making moments every single time they get on the phone with me because we're building the Space ISAC together. Yeah. So I think that's a slightly different group of folks maybe than those who are working in a SOC or something like that. I have noticed, just kind of taken note, that there's some of the technologies that are out there that are being underutilized, like for specific meetings that I've tried to conduct, then people are still saying, I can't actually have that meeting. And that's really a huge problem, because they should have access to that technology. We're talking about multi-million-dollar budgets, and we should be able to afford, and probably billion-dollar budgets, we should be able to afford or get access to the technology that's needed to get the work done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have a lot to add. What came to mind was kind of in the lines with what Chad was saying, in that, I don't know who said it originally, but, never let a good crisis go to waste. So my phrase has been carpe COVID. And I think in the digital and technical and cybersecurity space, my assessment of the workforce is that the pandemic's been a bit of a shot of adrenaline in our arm. We're realizing that, okay, the nation's kind of saying, we got to do a lot of telework, a lot of digital, so we got to make sure we can do that in secure forms. We got to update our infrastructure, the VPN solutions you came up with. I think we realizing that maybe our endpoints are more important to us than some of the other things, so we're looking at zero trust. We're all focused on ICAM heavily and all things identity. We're looking at our data closer. So I do, I feel a little bit of a buzz and some adrenaline. But I'll also say that there are also, in the work-life harmony, there are more stressors in everyone's lives, and we, as leaders, we got to make sure that we're looking at our people, and we're making sure they're getting the time and the resources and the resiliency skills that they need to be successful. Because it's also putting that same shot of adrenaline, right? You come down off it at some point, and then you got to make sure you got the resiliency to bounce back. But I would say overall, Rupi, that carpe COVID's in effect. I see more of it coming out there. We've just had a new administration come in, and when I think about some of the statements I'm reading, and I see the national security strategy draft statements and all that, I'm encouraged by seeing cyber and cybersecurity and supply chain disruption and all these things coming to the forefront again on the national stage. And as someone who has the mission to secure and defend our freedoms, I think that's an exciting time for us to be on mission. So that's the way I would say it.
Thank you all. Ms. Russo has another question. There are rumors that CVR Teams is going away in June. Are there discussions to keep CVR replacing with other tools? Or since it's been proven very valuable, probably more than any other collaboration tool at this point?
Yeah, Aaron, I'm going to take this one because this is kind of the Teams-like capability that we have put in the DoD. Tracy, you're right. We have the CVR capability that is set to expire in the June timeframe. That does not mean that we're walking away from that capability. Please recall, prior to all, we rolled out an IL5 Teams, Microsoft Teams capacity and capability. That has been in place. It continues to run side by side with what we're doing with CVR. CVR has some specific things that have enabled teleworking, mobile devices, and the ability to kind of bring in a whole bunch of different kinds of users outside of the traditional Teams environment. So we're identifying all of those things, and we're working with DoD CIO and DISA and SAFCN and others to make sure that we understand the abilities that are perhaps the deltas between the Teams environment and what we have with CVR, and figuring out how to bridge that into a different environment. Don't go away. It'll just be a little bit different.
Yeah, the great news about that story is we can do it. So we absolutely have to keep it going, and it's not hard. Really, we've learned from CVR Teams, and we have trust and confidence in that solution. And so it's just a matter of doing it again and getting out of our own way. We won't lose it, Tracy, don't worry.
Very good. Mr. Marks asks, since zero trust is so important, and as Lieutenant General Wegman says, the future of cybersecurity, does it make sense to have zero trust experts embedded into each mission defense team, into AOCs, and into all DCO locations? Can Defense University have a zero trust course or certificate that would validate this expertise?
Again, I think the intent in the question, let's all kind of be clear. Zero trust is a strategy. It can be many, and there's probably an infinite a number of aggregations of ends, ways, and means to where you can have a zero trust solution, a zero trust architecture that drives zero trust networks. And so I think if we wanted to get together and train and educate people on those principles, again, identity management's a key part of it, across the stack and the interaction at the persona level. Yeah, I think that would be a smart bet, is to upskill our workforce on the principles of zero trust and the strategy, and maybe some use cases, maybe bring in some industry partners that have some established zero trust networks to reinforce with live living. So absolutely, I think that would be a worthwhile endeavor.
Concur completely with General Wegeman on zero trust is really a strategy. General Wegeman challenges us all the time. We are talking on zero trust all the time, and he reminds us that we as a headquarters have to think in terms of OT&E, the organize, train, and equip. And so we're looking at zero trust and what does the organization look like? What does the training aspect of that look like? Could it be augmented by a digital U? Of course. What is the equipment that is in place? Some of that is the top-down policy, like ICAM. Some of that is some software-defined perimeters and other things that we would build into our zero trust strategy. But then we would also look at it organizationally. How do you protect a zero trust environment? It will require our operators from 16th Air Force to start thinking about things a little bit differently. And so how do you make sure that our cyber ninjas in San Antonio are prepared for that zero trust environment that we're putting in place? Aaron, zero trust goes across DoD and really all of industry as well. Do you have any experience with the zero trust thoughts?
Yeah, so just my opinion, of course, but it seems over the past month or two, we've seen that the adversary is in the network. We should treat it as a zero trust scenario where we have a situation on our hands where we need to start training for zero trust. We should take the NIST framework on zero trust and we should start developing courses and curriculum around that and design it in from the beginning so that we're architecting our networks in a manner that reflects the controls that are in those frameworks or that particular NIST framework that's available today, and see how else we can build on that, because it seems like we have an opportunity. We're in a moment in time where we need to make that decision.
Yeah, Aaron, you make a fantastic point.
Well said.
It really is an imperative. Zero trust has become an imperative because of the national cyber awakening that we have all gone through in the last couple of months, where all things have been questioned. What's the supply chain? Where are we buying equipment? Who are the technicians in the as-a-service model that are on the other end of the capability? And so, Aaron, you make some fantastic points on that. Concur.
Very good. Mr. Wes Watson asks, given the difference between military pay and the opportunities that exist in the civilian sector, what can we do to retain our outstanding talent for junior enlisted and other ranks so that we don't lose these skill sets?
Yeah, I think I said it many times. I'll say it again. We got to make sure that they believe and feel and know that they're valued members of a high-performing team doing really, really valuable work. The mission is what we offer that no one can in the private sector. And what I heard over and over as I interviewed my digital disruptors and their barriers is that we need to be able to see them, and we need to be able to, in our parlance, architect for them a path to greatness that allows them to stay in whether it's software development, platform development, zero trust strategy, or kind of non-technologist like me, just working tech strategy across the, as long as people can stay in that path and be upwardly mobile and continue with the shared value proposition, that's what we need to do. And so if you want to get into specifically what does that look like in an action plan, I think we have to take a holistic look as a service for where we're going in our digital future, about our Air Force specialty codes and what we expect out of both officers and enlisted on their paths. And we need to clean field or green field, pick your phrase, a new path to greatness that allows all the things I just described to occur. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have a highly valued airman or civilian or guardian that's going to just drive with their legs all day long and hit 550-foot center field home runs for their service at the same time they keep growing personally and professionally. Because right now, we rob from Peter to do a little bit of Paul's work in the current model, like Kessel Run, Platform One. We find someone that's hired in an Air Force specialty code to be, let's just say, a logistician or something like that, but we find out they're a phenomenal coder or developer or software engineer, and so we pulled them away because we identified that for about 5 months to go do something at Kessel Run. But their functional career field says, hey, you just took one of mine that I need, because we assessed that person to be a logistician, and now my logistician capability is decremented. And so they pull them back, and that person comes back, and their shoulders goes down, and their frown goes upside down, because they're like, I really like that, but a lot more than I like this. And so we have to create a new model to where we create an AFSC and or a path or a new thing that isn't an AFSC. Just call it, whatever, call it Bob. We create this path for Bobs, and it works across the Air Force and the Space Force. That's what we have to do. I don't think it can be a new version of old. I think it's going to have to be a new kind of well thought out, maybe a design thinking kind of experiment.
Sir, I agree with you. Money is not everything. Being part of something bigger than yourself is very real. I'm reminded of an experience that I had with a good friend. His name is David Recorden. He was a West Coast Silicon Facebook executive. He was hired by the Obama administration to come in and help think about White House IT. In my last job, I had an opportunity to work side by side with David, and was always so appreciative of what he reflected upon, what he brought to the game. David left the White House with the Trump administration coming in, but he has recently returned with the Biden administration and is the chief technologist for the White House and thinking about the integration of technology. One of my late night conversations with David went a little something like this. We don't have everything perfect in the military, but what we do is we rally around a really strong culture. And part of that culture is the way that we honor one another. It's the way that we endorse promotions and retirements. And we always include the family members. And we think about something more than just the one person or the contribution that they're making to the mission, but everything else that they bring in. And David used to say that that was different than his experience in Silicon Valley. That culture was strong there, but it was very focused on the bottom line, and it was very focused on what have you done for me lately. And what the military does provide is that caring. And we are not perfect, but we come in and we think about pay, and we think about facilities, and we think about living conditions, and we think about physical fitness. We think about all of those things as a group. And these are senior leaders like General Wegeman and General Kelly that sit around and think about how do we make life better for not only our airmen, but our airmen and their families, because that's ultimately who we're trying to retain. Aaron, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm glad I got to hear both of your answers first, because I was trying to think of how I can best contribute to answer this question. I did participate and help to facilitate a couple of design sprints at CyberWorks around this topic. So I'm familiar with the problem that was occurring at that time, and I'm not sure if it's still an issue, where there were folks that were going into career fields and they studied, they became experts in that career field, and then they never got to really use it. And then other scenarios where there was an extreme shortage, like in cyber, and we had biology majors that were going to do cyber work. So hopefully that's since then, I'm sure it has. But we have, I think the situation that you describe, you could think of the military as like a company. It has its own corporate culture, has its own culture. Every single company out there has the exact same problem. We actually are standing up a workforce community of interest in the Space ISAC to help attract and retain talent into the cybersecurity for space career field. And that could be applicable to whether you're in the military or you're working for a company. And so all those factors still apply. What is your quality of life? What's your experience? But really what it comes down to is also, you put in a place that you're trained and you're equipped to do your job, and are you satisfied with your career trajectory? And So that's what we'll be addressing. Maybe the public and private sector can work on this one together.
Sounds great.
By the way, I'm a biology major, so I'm ready to come work for you whenever you want.
Sounds great. We'll take you.
Very good. The concept of information sharing and analysis centers, ISACs, has been around for quite some time now. So this is a question for all three. How, from a DoD perspective, do we integrate more tightly with the ISACs, not just space, but across the board? And then from a space ISAC perspective, what do you need from the DoD to be more effective at what you do?
Aaron, this
Yeah,
sounds like
I'd
your
love to
wheelhouse.
see it. Yeah, in talking to ISACs, there are some that the DoD and others that don't at all. And it's not even been considered. I think that they would and it just reflects back on their sector that they're a part of, like the water ISAC maybe would be a good one. Communications ISAC, I don't know that they work with the DoD as much, but they could be. They're really strongly tied to DHS CISA. So the construct of ISACs when it was first stood up was all tied back to DHS. And that's why the COM ISAC is so closely tied to DHS. And others that have stood up since then, I think they're, whenever they open their doors in, whatever, sector they're in, kind of dictate their partners are going to be. And that can always change and evolve over time. But with regard to the space ISAC, then the minute that we opened the door, then we knew that we would have a lot of partners from the US federal government, because there's over 18 agencies that have space within their mission set. So that was intentional and deliberate on our part, that we would allow for that public-private sector engagement to be very broad and expansive, and even include international government partners. And then as far as what do we need, I can answer that as well. We're starting those conversations with our top 6 priority partner government organizations. And we need to design it in at the beginning. And we're at the beginning, so we just need to keep working to design it in and realize that we're all on the same team. And when we work together to collaborate and share information with one another, then we're raising the security posture of global space. So we're solving a problem that will last for decades and will be even expanding beyond our own Earth that we live on today.
Aaron, you make some great points. I concur with everything you said. The only thing I would pile on is to say a lot of it's awareness. So I sat in your presentation this morning. I learned, quite frankly, a little bit about what ISACs are all about. I was hitting the websites that you were recommending, and noted that there are a number of different ISACs that are out there that, quite frankly, I didn't know how we were tying in, and I still don't know how we're tying in. I took it as an action item. You noted this morning that there was an IT ISAC. I noted that there was no cyber ISAC. And so perhaps those are being done in other places, but I think the model that the space ISAC has enlightened us on, and the interactions and the partnerships and the relationships that are in place, I think it's something that we'll go back and see how we can broaden that for my career field and other career fields.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to my thought on collaborative dependency. I think it's the same kind of thing. If I go back to my time in 2012, 2013, when we were literally, cutting our teeth on the Cyber Mission Force and the United States Cyber Command standing up as a sub-unified command at the time, and the policy and authorities they need, we came up working with OST Cyber Policy. Eric Rosenbach at the time was there, Major General John Davis, a lot of other great Americans working on this thing. We came up with this thing called the bubble chart. The bubble chart talked about what we wanted to do is we wanted to align roles and responsibilities between .com, .mil, and .gov. And so what we missed in that is the fact that this is a ubiquitous space. There's no international waters in cyberspace. It's all pretty much privately owned public spaces, if you will. And so, that bubble chart kind of stovepiped us a little bit. And now I think as a nation, we figured out a little bit more. We do have ISACs on critical infrastructure that are focused a lot on cybersecurity. Right. We have CISA now doing a lot of great things. And so the interesting thing is we didn't hand the bubble chart to the adversaries and say, please, these are our bubbles. We need you to, is that a .mil threat or is that a .gov threat? And please, all your .com threats, put them over here. No, that's not how it works. And so I agree with everything Aaron said. And what we got to learn to do is to collaborate together and realize that this, in all the cyberspaces that we have to defend and secure for our mission and for the private sector's mission and for our interagencies missions, we have to depend on each other. It's none of this technology typically is military built technology. It's all the stuff that we get from the defense industrial base and from the private and commercial vendors. It's their tech. So the partnership has to occur and the shared knowledge has to occur. And I will echo what Aaron said is the phrase I would use, not to put words in her mouth, is we got to bake it in from the beginning. You got to bake it in. So that's a great question.
All right, panel, we have have time for one more question here. We have a question from Doug Dudley. We all understand the importance of ITAS to the future of Air and Space Force missions. However, comments have been made that ongoing budget constraints could put the full ITAS implementation at risk. Do you believe the Air Force will get the full ITAS we need, or will we be forced to accept something short of the desired end state? If so, how do you prioritize the requirements?
Yeah, so Doug's got scar tissue for this. Good to hear you, Doug. Hope you're doing well. What's the end state? I don't think it's smart to think about ITAS as an end state. Right. The strategy for ITAS is to constantly be winning and be ahead of the adversary in the digital space. But there's no way we're going to say 6 years from now, we fielded ITAS, we're done. Whew, man, that was hard. High five, let's go to the bar. And so I would kind of just alter the thought in that, can we develop a competency and an advocacy for resource investments that will continue in perpetuity, that will allow us to have a 21st century or 22nd century, if you will, always, cyber security, information security advantage for what we need to do as a nation. I do think we are getting to where we will have the resources and advocacy to do that. But there's a lot of tough choices ahead, and so I think the imperative for us and for the experts that we've been seeing is we have to prioritize what are the key core components of enterprise IT as a service that we must have, and what are things that are maybe just some bells and whistles that are nice to have, and we have to be very, very discerning about what we want, and then we got to make sure what we have works to build trust, and so that it keeps going in perpetuity. One of the things I believe that got us into the situation we have right now with the current AFNet is we thought about it as an end state. We built it, we underfunded it, we put it online, we didn't architect it right, and then we're like, whew, that was hard, but we got an AFNet. It's awesome. We got some cyber weapon systems. We'll start under-sustaining them, and we thought we were done, and we rested on our laurels. And honestly, in the grand scheme of things, as someone that commanded the AFNet for 2 years, knock on wood, we've done pretty well from an adversary's perspective. So I would challenge us not to think of it as an end state, but more of an awareness and a competency that we constantly have to stay ahead of our adversary in our digital networks, in our whether it's an enterprise IT as a service or an enterprise IT architecture.
You see why I love coming to work each day? I get General Wegeman.
Because you don't work where I work, right?
Sir, I absolutely agree with you, and I love hearing your vision. I absolutely endorse what you're saying. This is not an end state. This is the next iteration of the way that we increase our game and build the rock solid digital infrastructure that we need for the future fight. Doug, it's a great question. Thanks for the scar tissue that you put into this.
Yeah.
Hope you're doing well.
Aaron, anything from your side?
Well, as I'm putting the pieces together, listening, then the only thing I can say, because I don't know anything about ITAS, is that what I am seeing on the private sector side is that everything's moving to cloud. So take that into consideration. I know it's not the be all end all. You can't just move to cloud 100% like at a drop of a hat. But we are running a virtual watch center for Space ISAC, And although we will have a physical environment, then we're mostly going to be operating virtually. And so it's all cloud-based, and it'll allow for redundancy and backups and stronger remote capability, and public and private sector analysts to participate in that watch center. So I'll stop talking with that.
Actually, I just, as a pile on, because Aaron just made me think of something, that was a great point about cloud, multi-cloud, multi-hybrid cloud. We had a previous question and conversation about upskilling us on zero trust strategy and all that. I would add to that requirement in the training and education space, cloud engineering, cloud architecture, cloud security. We actually don't have a lot of people that are really in state-of-the-art trained and educated in that. And so we're going to have to add that into our job jar for Air Education Training Command as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Great point.
All right, Generals, Ms. Miller, thank you very much for sharing time with us today, especially going the extra mile for the happy hour. It's these kinds of interactions that really kind of highlight the show and make value on both sides of the equation and make this a thing that we all enjoy and come back to and really get an opportunity to interact like this. So thank you again for your time, and hopefully we'll see you back here on stage many times in the near future with a little bit, hopefully, more audience next time than we have this year, and do the interaction in person for an actual physical happy hour rather than maybe a virtual happy hour. So thanks again for your time. Appreciate it.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Aaron. Good
And,
seeing
Thanks,
you.
Aaron.
Thank you.
And thanks to the audience, too, for participating in submitting all those great questions. You know, interaction takes two sides, and so we thank all of you for joining today's session. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 08:30 for a tech talk, and then you won't want to miss at 9 o'clock. We have the new director of the Defense Information Systems Agency, Lieutenant General Skinner, for a panel that has a broad viewpoint from all different services, and so make sure you join that panel. You won't want to miss it. Good night here from the Broadmoor, and see you all tomorrow.